folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. I wanted to talk to you today about a little conversation I had this weekend with my 13-year-old son. Something we talked about. He was asking questions about, stuff going on in the world. Why? Why are people this way? Why are people doing this kind of stuff? Why are people behaving this way? And so I gave him a little dad speech on why I think, well, it's all happening, or at least one of the reasons. And I want to kind of give you at least the highlights of that here in just a little bit. But first, on kind of the more prepping homesteading tips, this morning, a neighbor down the road showed up my front driveway with a truckload of firewood. And he's a firewood guy, that's what he does for a living in the wintertime. And a lot of the businesses in my area, they heat with firewood. And he's kind of their go-to guy to supply that. He has a really good reputation around here when it comes to firewood. And I've talked to him before several times. He's a good old boy. And he's told me, he said, I have a lot of times just truckloads of odds and end pieces. Maybe they're too short, maybe they're too small in diameter, maybe they're just odd size shapes. He said, and a lot of my customers, they want everything uniform and looking good. He said that, it's all seasoned oak wood. He said, but it's just, they don't want that kind of stuff. And I said, hey, I'll burn any of that kind of stuff. I don't care what it looks like as long as it burns good. So he showed up this morning with a load of that. My son and I have been out stacking it, and some of it needed split. And honestly, there was quite a bit of it that I couldn't see anything wrong with it. It was pretty good looking wood. And I wanted to pass on a little tip for a lot of you prepping and homesteaders, people, especially homesteaders. Don't be afraid and don't be confined to a box that you can only get kind of new stuff, or that you can only have the nicest and the finest stuff. A lot of times you can get some pretty good things for free. Something that someone's thrown away as trash, or they just didn't want to fix it. Because see, we live in this world that a lot of people, they want it. They don't want to mess with fixing something. We live in a disposable society. So if it doesn't work, they throw it away and they buy a new one. Or if they're buying something, they want it to look just a certain way. We go to the Amish a lot of times and get vegetables really, really cheap, and even sometimes free, because they sell them to farmers markets and stuff. And people only want a perfect shaped tomato, a perfect shaped cucumber, and then they have all this excess that they can't even eat. And we get a lot from them, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's blemished a little bit, or it's an odd shape, but there's nothing wrong with it. And it's sad that we live in a world that way. And I think that's probably going to eventually come to an end as things get harder. But don't be afraid to get that kind of stuff. I have tools around here that I have gotten for free from people because they needed work. I've got a backup chainsaw. And it's an old one. It works good. It's just my backup. But this guy was going to throw it away because it wasn't running anymore. And all it needed was a tune-up. I've got a leaf blower, same situation. I have one of them smaller tillers, same exact situation. Guy, it wouldn't run. He didn't want to mess with it, so he's going to trash it. And all I needed was to tinker with it a little bit, and it works fine. I've built chicken coops with scrap materials that people were just going to dump, throw in the trash. A lot of things like that. Back in the old days, that was just normal. People would barter and trade and give things away and reuse things over and over again. And they had to take care of things. There's refrigerators lasted longer than people did. And nowadays, if you can find one that lasts more than 5 or 6 years, you're doing good. Same way with washing machines and stuff like that. So don't be afraid to take something that is used and something that may need a little tinkering on. You need to get good at that too, especially like small engine repairs. A lot of stuff, you don't have to be a master mechanic or a master fix-all, but you just have a decent little working knowledge of how to make things work. And you'd be surprised how many things you can get for little to nothing. And start building your supply of tools and things that you need around the homestead. And then also like this wood, I didn't even ask the guy about it. He was just telling me. And he's like, yeah, because he knows that we burn wood. I had a guy last year, another neighbor, and he showed up with a flatbed trailer full of an oak tree that came down in his yard. It had been sitting there for a while, and he finally cut it up and threw it on this flatbed. And he showed up in our driveway, and he said, hey, I don't burn wood anymore. He said, if you want this, you can have it. And that needed to be processed. It was big, huge chunks, but it was a good size. You know, I mean, we're talking like a 30-inch diameter oak tree, and most of it was in his flatbed of his trailer. So a lot of times you can get stuff like that. So don't be afraid. You might have to put a little work into it, a little elbow grease, a little tinkering with it, but you can get things for free or for very cheap. That way, you know, my winter snow boots, my heavy duty winter snow boots that are good for like -30. They were basically boots someone was going to throw away because they just didn't use them anymore, and they were older, but they're still great. I mean, they're still waterproof. Nothing wrong with them other than they're just old. And so don't be afraid to find stuff like that. I know a lot of people nowadays look down upon that. Oh, it's dumpster diving. Oh, it's scavenging and stuff. But that's just ridiculous. That's just the society that we live in. That's just they're off in the head. You know, this whole society we live in, it's off in the head. And so, well, that's kind of my segue into this next part that I want to talk about, the little dad speech I gave to my son yesterday. Before I do that, I do want to mention this company. You've probably all heard me talk about it. It's My Patriot Supply. If you're in the market for some really good freeze-dried emergency food, they're my go-to company for that. They're a really good company, great customer service. They're running a New Year's special right now on a lot of products. So if you've been thinking about it and you have the money, now might be the time to do it because of this New Year's special. Some products are, up to $150 off, depending on what you buy. So there's a link down in the description below to My Patriot Supply that I work with. All right, so my son was asking me, I don't even remember exactly how the conversation got started. I think my wife was telling me about some new fad or something. I think one of her friends, when they were kind of texting and giggling about some new fad that I don't even remember what it was. And my son, he's like, why do people do this? Like, why do they, this is just silly. Why do they do that? And I said, let me tell you, son, because it's way deeper and bigger than you think. You just open a can of worms and dad's going to school you. I said, humans from the dawn of humanity, from when Adam and Eve left the garden, they've basically had to survive. No matter how good and how advanced we became, there was always this level of survival that we needed. We needed to make sure that we didn't freeze to death in the wintertime, that we had food and water to drink, that that wild animals didn't kill us, that a warring tribe didn't kill us, protecting our children from thieves and our wives from someone, dragging them off. And so that's kept us busy. We had to survive and had to work hard to provide for ourselves. Providing for a home, home for your family wasn't easy. You typically had to build it yourself. And you had to work raw land to get it to that way and cut trees down or cut sod or whatever it was to build your home for your family. And it was hard. Life was hard. Life has always been hard. And there are a few times in human history where life got easy for people, and every single time life got really easy for people, that society collapsed. Well, guess what, folks? Our society has gotten really easy. Things have been super easy for well over a century now. And they're just getting easier and easier. It's too convenient. It's too comfortable. It's too cushy. It's too lavish of a life for people. And I don't think that the human mind can really, deal with that. I think that there's just something in how we were created that we're just not capable of handling that kind of a life because we get bored. And when humans get bored, they make up things to do. And when they run out of making up things to do, they make up things to complain about. And they make up things to whine about and things to be offended by and to claim this victim status for every little, thing that you can think of. You look back at our grandparents and our great-grandparents. Were they the type of generation that whined and complained about things? Did they get offended because someone said something to them that was, not the necessarily nicest thing? No, of course not. They didn't, because they had to worry about survival. They didn't care about, a little word that meant nothing to them. They didn't care that, that someone did or said something or that wasn't, taking care of them a certain way, because they didn't want people to take care of them. They wanted to take care of their own self. And so we live in this world where it's just too comfortable. And I think that's a huge part of what's going on right now. We've lived in a society that it's become so hyper-dependent upon the government, hyper-dependent upon the system and the infrastructure around us, that we no longer even have the concept of what independence means. We don't, most people don't even really understand what liberty means, what it means to own yourself and to completely rely upon yourself for existence other than the Father up in heaven. We've lost that as a society. I know many of you get it, but as a society a whole, generalizing our culture, it's lost. People don't get it anymore. We got so bored, things started getting so easy from the early American frontier and colonial times and stuff that, we invented things like television and radio and air conditioning and the entertainment industry, modern sports, things like that became something to fill our minds because we were getting bored. We no longer had to survive out on the frontier. Things were pretty easy for us. We just went down to the butcher shop and the grocery store to get our food. Our homes were insulated better and heated better, and we had decent jobs, and things were getting pretty good in America. So we come up with all this entertainment industry to basically fill our time because we were bored. We were becoming bored. And so that worked for a while. We had to go off to war, a couple of wars, and so that kind of filled in time there. And then we come back, and guess what? Things were even better. We had more conveniences, more lavish lifestyles, better income, better economy, better everything. I mean, everything was just getting good. And we got bored, and so there was more entertainment. The world, our country and our society started to focus more and more around the entertainment industries, about thinking outside the box, philosophical, ideas, social justice ideas, all these things. And from that point till now, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. To now, TV and stuff, that doesn't even entertain us. That doesn't even, if you look at the ratings, people aren't even watching TV and stuff, and they're not watching sports and news like they used to because that's become boring. People are bored. And so what are these bored people doing? They're making stuff up. They're making stuff up to do. You see all these challenges and stuff online of to do this or to do that are absolutely stupid. They're just ridiculous. But we're bored, so we might as well do it. People are bored with what's around them and what's online and what's TV, so they make up stuff. They post ridiculous things on the internet just to get attention because they want something to satisfy themselves, to soothe their irritability and their boredness and their inept and inadequate self. So they post all this stuff online so that they can get attention. And then that leads to, well, I'm offended by what you say. I'm offended by this, and I'm offended by that, and I'm a victim. And everything is all about me. I'm a victim. I'm offended. You should pay me attention. You should give me special privileges. Why? Because I made something up that I'm offended by, or I made something up that I identify as, and now I should receive special privileges because of that. This is all because we have a very soft, a very comfortable, a very just weak society. I mean, that's just what it boils down to. Our grandfathers and great-grandfathers and their great-grandfathers didn't have to live like this and worry about this because they were too busy surviving. They were too busy making sure that their family was safe every day, making sure that their family had food to eat, to keep them from dying of starvation, to make sure that their family weren't attacked by wild animals or other people that wanted to do them harm. They were busy doing things just to live. The average person today, especially American, they don't have to do anything to just live, okay? Everything is handed to them. They know they're not going to starve to death because there's so much aid that is going to be taken care of. They know they're not going to freeze to death. They know that they're not going to, the very basic needs that a human needs to just survive, they have that already. And then they not only have that, but they have lavish things. They have things that are luxurious, things that are comfortable, things that are convenient, that makes their life, I mean, the average person nowadays compared to 100 to 200 years ago, it's almost like they don't have to do anything to exist, that you could just lay in bed and everything be done for you. It's almost to that point, folks. And that's why we have the problems today. We have a weak society that's just not capable of actually standing up for right and wrong. They accept wrong things. They accept evil things because they're too weak to stand up against it. And so they justify that evilness. They justify it and make it okay because they're too weak to actually stand up against it. We also have a society that's just lazy in general about working. They don't want to work. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to actually put in any effort whatsoever because they're lazy and they're impatient and they just don't want to do anything. We have a society that doesn't want to think outside their box, that the head. They don't want to think outside the box. They don't want to use their brain to actually figure something out. They just want to do what they're told. They don't want to read an entire book or find out the entire information on something. They just want to Google an answer and have a quick answer, and that's it. This is a society that we live in. If you stand back and you look at that, if you look at all these things that I'm talking about, it definitely points to why we are having the problems that we have. Our society is weak. Our society is lazy. Our society is bored. There's nothing for them to do, and so they're making up ridiculous things to keep them occupied, when all the really important things they ignore because those things are hard. They only want to do easy stuff. And so the easy stuff is making a video complaining about someone calling them the wrong pronoun, or complaining that they aren't getting, special enough treatment because of who they are or whatever. They don't want to actually get up and really work for things. They don't want to go out and fight for things. They don't want to stand up. They don't want to risk everything for what's right because it's too hard. So they just accept what's wrong and live with it. This is the problem with our society. And until this changes, we're going to continue having the problems that we have. And this is where I was mentioning yesterday or day before, one of the last videos, that weak men create hard times create strong men create weak times. We are in that time period of a weak time. And if we don't have enough strong people stand up, if these weak times don't create, these hard times created by weak men, if these hard times don't create enough strong people to stand up and to change things, we will be doomed for generations, folks. This type of mentality that nothing that's important matters, and the only thing that matters is what's easy, what's convenient, what's comfortable, what makes me feel good, what does only me, good and justice, then if that's all that we are as a society anymore, then we are absolutely doomed to failure, and a collapse of our society will absolutely come. There is no other way about it. History repeats itself over and over and over again, and every time a society has gotten this close to this kind of convenient lavishness, they collapse. And America will too. And I don't think we're at a point, or we'll see a point, that will turn around before it collapses. I think we're past that point. That's my personal opinion. I think that the only way to stop this and turn us around is to hit rock bottom, and is for those strong people to finally be created out of those really weak times. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.